more than 4 million gallons of heavy crude oil into the ocean and onto our coast beaches. Over the next days, weeks, and months, the massive oil slicks spread through the Santa Barbara Channel, onto the islands, and onto beaches from Goleta to Ventura. At the time, the spill was the worst in the nation's history and quickly became the spill heard around the world.
The response to this catastrophe was dramatic, from the streets of Santa Barbara to the halls of Congress. Dignitaries, political activists, senators, and even President Nixon came out to bear witness. People who had not considered themselves activists came out to protest. And soon, some of the first community-based regional environmental organizations in the US started to form. The ones that Linda mentioned earlier, Get Oil Out, Community Environmental Council, and Environmental Defense Center. As well, one of the first environmental studies programs at a major university in the United States also formed at UCSB. All of this gave voice to a new approach, at least for modern times, to think of our world as a living, interconnected system. By the spring of 1970, people around the nation were gathering together and supporting each other for the first Earth Day, an event that continues to this day in Santa Barbara as one of the largest, most consistently held Earth Days around the country. Within a couple of years after the oil spill, the modern environmental movement had been born.
And within a year of the spill, Congress passed the first major environmental protection laws in the nation, starting with the National Environmental Policy Act, and President Nixon established the Environmental Protection Agency. Shortly thereafter, a host of other laws were passed by Congress and signed by President Nixon with broad bipartisan support: the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, and in California, the California Coastal Act, which was signed by Republican President Reagan. While tremendous progress was made following the Santa Barbara oil spill, that did not stop other similar disasters, such as the Exxon Valdez tanker spill and the Deepwater Horizon explosion. More recently, in 2015, an onshore pipeline carrying crude oil produced from our offshore platforms ruptured near Gaviota, causing oil to spread 150 miles down our coast all the way to Manhattan Beach. These disastrous and inevitable consequences of oil development make it all the more urgent that we stay vigilant in the face of continued threats, including today the Trump administration's proposal to open more than 90% of the nation's coasts, including the entire California coast, to new offshore oil drilling. We are also called to respond to an even greater crisis 50 years later: the effect of fossil fuel production and consumption on our climate. Here in Santa Barbara, higher temperatures, extended droughts, year-round fire seasons are the types of climate change impacts that we are experiencing and that are linked to catastrophic disasters like the 2017 Thomas Fire and the 2018 debris flows.
Among the many lessons that we can take away from the '69 oil spill is how the community responded. Those who were involved talked not just about the devastation, but about the pride and the connection that came from working together to solve the problem. Some of the environmental heroes have passed on, but some are here today. I'm going to read a short list of just a few. Bud Bottoms, Lois Capps, George Clyde, Hal Conklin, Carla Frisk, Sue Higman, Phil Marking, J.B. McCrummen, Mark McGinnis, Marianne Mott, Paul Rellis, Selma Rubin, Frank Sargis, Bob Solon, here tonight, 92 years old. Naomi Schwartz, Lois Seidenberg, and Alvin Weingand. And that was very much an incomplete list, but these leaders changed the course of history, not just for Santa Barbara, but for California and the nation. We need that kind of passion and commitment today. We need immediate and radical action on climate change, action that is all-encompassing, with laws and economic policies that hold accountable those who would do bad for our climate and incentivize those who would do good. A price on carbon, for example, pressure to divest from fossil fuels, deep personal action from political leaders and everyone in this room. The threat we are facing today from fossil fuels requires us to be all in. We need to bring in youth. We need to bring in women. We need to ensure that those who are most impacted by the fossil fuel industry, traditionally people of color and low-income communities, are at the center of this response. So today we are here for many reasons: to commemorate, to celebrate, and to call for a new environmentalism. One that honors all living things and ensures a healthy and just future for all. And as we lean into this today together, let's remember that the greatest form of renewable energy is the one that we are all part of, and that is people power.
It is my great pleasure to introduce Congressman Salud Carbajal and State Senator Hannah Beth Jackson. I have to do your introduction.
Oh, you don't need to do an introduction.
I'm going to do an introduction.
We're fine. We can start in there. Not to worry.
Say a couple words.
I think they know us by now.
We did not rehearse, obviously. We are really fortunate to have the Congressman and State Senator joining us. Congressman Carbajal, obviously well known in this room, has been working to protect our coast for decades. First as a 3-term member of the County Board of Supervisors, and now in his 2nd term in Congress. As a county supervisor, Mr. Carbajal was a consistent voice against offshore oil and gas development. He has continued that leadership role in Congress, where the first bill he introduced was the California Clean Coast Act, which would place a permanent ban on any new oil leasing or drilling off the California coast. Maybe we'll even get a hearing and a vote on that bill with the new House.
Absolutely.
He has also been a strong advocate for policies to address climate change and serves on the bipartisan Climate Solutions Caucus. I'm going to introduce the state senator too, so that we can shift over and they can piggyback over there. Senator Jackson served 3 terms in the state assembly and is in her 2nd term in the Senate. Throughout her career, she has fought aggressively and tenaciously to protect our coast and climate from oil and gas development. Most notably, she successfully authored a bill that put an end to oil tankering for oil produced offshore the coast of California. She passed legislation after the 2015 Refugio oil spill, requiring increased pipeline inspections and quicker and more effective oil spill response. She secured funding to properly plug leaking abandoned oil wells off Summerlin, and most recently, she led the charge to make it harder to develop new federal leases off our coast. So we are so fortunate to be represented by these heroes.
Good afternoon, Santa Barbara. Let's try that again. That's not the Santa Barbara I know. Good afternoon, Santa Barbara. That's more like it. I want to thank you, Linda and Sigrid, for that introduction, and I want to thank all of you for being here today, for showing your solidarity and support for our local community's ongoing effort to preserve and save the environment. Let's thank the amazing and extraordinary nonprofit organizations who have taken on this leadership mantle over the years and for continuing to advocate and shine light on the nation's need and urgency to make progress in safeguarding the health and well-being of our planet. Let's give them a round of applause. And in case you don't know who they are, that's the Community Environmental Council, the Environmental Defense Center, Get Oil Out, UCSB's Department of Environmental Studies, just to name a few. As was mentioned, these important groups and many leaders arose out of the disaster of the 1969 oil spill. And we will always be grateful to them for their tireless work to keep our community, environment, and economy safe. One of those leaders that was near and dear to me was my former boss, friend, and mentor, the late Supervisor Naomi Schwartz. As many of you know, I was recently re-elected to my second term. And it's people like you that help Democrats take back the House of Representatives. Our country spoke loudly this last November. It wanted to see the end of chaos, division, and corruption that we were experiencing for 2 years. This president has done everything within his power to undermine, water down, and eliminate environmental and climate protections. First, he took the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Agreement, then appointed special interest cronies to his cabinet to undermine good policy. He rounded out his anti-environmental crusade by doing away with investment incentives to hamper the development of renewable energy sources and technology, all with the intention to sabotage, weaken, and eliminate important regulations meant to protect our public health, natural resources, water, and the air that we breathe. But I'm here to tell you that this new House of Representatives will do our best to provide a check and balance and stop this previously unfeathered administration from further destroying our environment. Under the leadership of President Speaker Nancy Pelosi, we will fight to change this course and have a legacy of good environmental stewardship for our children and future generations to come. As you know, the first bill that I introduced, as Linda said, as your representative, was the California Clean Coast Act. I did this in 2017 on the anniversary of the 1969 oil spill, along with the key groups that I mentioned earlier. Once again, I am honored to reintroduce this legislation, which would permanently ban oil and gas drilling in federal waters off the California coast. Our struggle today is more important than ever, as the Trump's Department of the Interior has taken on the role to advocate for oil and gas interests rather than to manage and protect the public's land and interests. Later this year, we will see the release of a new Outer Continental Shelf oil and gas coastal leasing plan. Yes, because this administration discarded the existing plan created under President Obama. When this plan is released, I will be calling and looking to all of you to provide comments to the new proposal to ensure that Central Coast voices are heard and to keep our precious marine sanctuary and the coast protected from future offshore oil and gas drilling. In conclusion, more than ever, I would submit to you that we all need to aggressively recommit our time and energy to this struggle if we are to save our environment and the planet. Thank you, and now I give you our great state senator. She told me to call her that, by the way. No, she didn't. Senator Hannah Beth Jackson.
That actually isn't true. I told him to call me that fabulous state senator. But here we are with the fabulous people of Santa Barbara County. Thank you for being here. Thank you for electing me. Thank you for fighting for the people of this state, for our planet, for our future. It is because of the work that was done right here in Santa Barbara after the oil spill some 50 years ago. And I look out here, I see a few people with gray hair who remember that, but I also see some young people who don't. And so I want to say a few words both to the old folks like myself and the next generation coming up so that we can fight together against an administration, a focal point, an oil industry that is more concerned with profit than the planet. We need to get them out. We need to take back our community, our state, our country, our world for the next generations who come after us. So back in 1969, they were drilling for oil anywhere, everywhere, and wherever they darn well pleased, without conscience or consequence. We had this oil spill, and I was actually in college in Claremont. I wasn't here in Santa Barbara at the time, but I remember the newspaper stories. I remember the pictures in the Santa Barbara News Press. Yes, back when there was a Santa Barbara News Press. They cared about our environment, that recognized the importance of our coastline, not just for our economy, which is critically important, not just for the wildlife and the marine life and all the things that are part of the greater plan, but also because of the quality of life that we here in this community feel is so critically important. So we fought back. GOO came into place. The Environmental Defense Center, the CEC, the University of California at Santa Barbara said, we are going to step up and step into this fray. We're going to make this happen. And then all of you out there who remember this, who said, we are not going to tolerate this kind of besmirching of nature's beauty and the future of this planet. And we have fought that for the last 50 years, and we will continue that fight going forward. As a result of this moment of awakening that we all experienced, we now have the California Coastal Commission. We also have the California Sanctuary Act, thanks to your former state senator and assembly member, Jack O'Connell, who introduced that bill and it got it passed in 1994. And today, this state has taken the lead on global climate change, on trying to preserve the Paris Accord. Yes, we are the People's Republic of California, and we're darn proud of it. And we know the impacts of fossil fuel and climate change. We know the impacts that it's had on warming our climate, the impacts that lead to hurricanes and to tornadoes and to mud and debris flows and to fires that have taken such a great proportion of our state and killed so many of our people. They are due to climate change, whether you like it or not, Mr. Trump, whether you like an oil company or not. Your time is up. So, as your state senator, it has been my honor, my privilege, my sense of responsibility to pass legislation to try to protect our coastline. Everything from making sure that if we're going to keep drilling, we're going to pipeline it and not tanker it, because when you have a tanker problem like the Exxon Valdez, there's no way to turn off the tap. And if you are going to pipeline it, you darn well better make sure that that pipeline is properly inspected and that you take responsibility for the mess that you could make in one of the dirtiest, most dangerous, most disgusting procedures, which is oil drilling off our coast, inland, whether it's from fracking, whether it's from other kinds of development, steam injection. We can do better. We will do better. We've got 300 days of sunshine in this state, and we are developing that kind of solar technology, wind and biomass and other forms of technology that are going to protect this planet. And one of the things I want to mention, I know I've gone over my time, but I'm following Salute here, and it was my great honor to introduce SB 834, which is now passed and which is being used by several other states in the country. Now, this bill is our version of a wall, Mr. Trump, because We have created a wall around the waters of California. You may insist on drilling on the Outer Continental Shelf, but we're not going to let you bring that oil in. How do you like that, Mr. Trump? So we are here because we all know this is indeed, as our former Governor Jerry Brown said, the existential crisis of our time. We must do better. We must heed the scientists. We must recognize that if you don't drill, you can't spill. And that is a critical message that we want to take forward. And as our Native American forebears who were represented today by our wonderful Chumash, they so appropriately observed and recognized that we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. We can do better. We must do better for ourselves and for future generations. We are Santa Barbara, California. Hear us roar.